Margaret had always believed that life's most meaningful moments came disguised as ordinary Tuesday afternoons, at 58. With silver threading through her auburn hair and laugh lines that spoke of both joy and sorrow. She understood that kindness often bloomed in the most unexpected places. She adjusted her cleaning cart outside the gleaming tower of Morrison and Associates, the financial firm where she'd worked the night shift for 3 years. The building stood like a glass monument against the evening sky, its windows reflecting the soft glow of sunset. Margaret preferred these quiet hours when the offices emptied and she could work in peaceful solitude, listening to the gentle hum of the building settling into night. Tonight felt different, though she couldn't say why. Perhaps it was the way the autumn light caught the windows, or the unusual stillness that seemed to wrap round the 42nd floor as she stepped off the elevator. She consulted her work order, squinting slightly at the small print. Suite 4207, Mr. Davidson's office. A routine cleaning for a routine evening. Margaret had been cleaning offices long enough to read the stories they told. Family photos spoke of love and loss. Coffee rings on desks revealed late nights and dedication, and the careful arrangement of personal items whispered of hopes and dreams. She approached each space with quiet respect, understanding that these weren't just workplaces but pieces of people's lives. The office door stood slightly ajar, unusual for this time of evening. Margaret knocked gently out of habit, though she expected no response. When silence greeted her, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The space took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, where lights twinkled like earthbound stars. The office was elegant but warm, with rich wood paneling and leather chairs that looked well-loved rather than merely expensive. Personal touches caught her eye: a hand-carved chess set, books with worn spines, and a photograph of an elderly woman with kind eyes who reminded Margaret of her own grandmother. As she began her work, Margaret found herself moving with extra care. This wasn't the cold, impersonal office of someone who lived only for profit. The desk held a letter half-written in careful handwriting, beginning with "Dear Mom." A coffee mug bore the faded logo of what looked like a small-town baseball team. Fresh flowers, not expensive arrangements, but simple daisies in a mason jar, sat by the window. Margaret was on her hands and knees, carefully cleaning a spot near the window where someone had spilled coffee. When she heard the elevator ding in the distance, her heart quickened slightly, but she continued to work. Night security made rounds, and other cleaning staff worked different floors still. Something made her pause and listen. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, measured and unhurried. They seemed to be heading in her direction. Margaret glanced at her cart positioned just outside the office door and felt a flutter of uncertainty. She double-checked her work order once more. Suite 4207. She was in the right place. The footsteps stopped just outside the office. Margaret froze, cloth in hand, as a tall figure appeared in the doorway. The man looked to be in his early 40s, with dark hair touched by grey at the temples and eyes that held both intelligence and something that looked like loneliness. He wore an expensive suit, but carried himself with the kind of weariness that expensive clothes couldn't hide. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Margaret felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment at being caught on her knees on his beautiful floor. She started to rise, apologies forming on her lips, but something in his expression stopped her. "I am so sorry," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was just cleaning." "And I thought, please," he said softly, raising a gentle hand. "You don't need to apologize. I'm Thomas Harrison." He paused, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "And I think you might be in the wrong office. But I'm rather glad you are. Asterisk Margaret blinked in surprise. She'd expected anger, perhaps irritated demands for her to leave immediately. Instead, this man, this wealthy executive, spoke too, her as if she were a welcomed guest rather than an intruder. Asterisk I'm Margaret, she said, slowly rising to her feet. Margaret Chen, I've been cleaning the ROM office, haven't I? She felt tears prick at her eyes, thinking of the job she might lose, the explanation she'd have to give to her supervisor. Asterisk Thomas stepped fully into the office, closing the door gently behind him. Well, technically, yes, but you've done something remarkable here. He gestured round the space. This office hasn't felt this alive in months. There's something about the way you've cared for it. I can see it in every detail. Asterisk Margaret looked round. Confused, I just cleaned it the way I clean every office. Asterisk no, Thomas said, shaking his head slowly. You've treated this space like it mattered, like the person who works here matters. That's not something you can fake or train for. He moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. My mother used to say you could tell everything about a person by how they treated the things that didn't belong to them. Asterisk something in his voice made Margaret's heart ache with recognition. She sounds like a wise woman. Asterisk she was. Thomas touched the photograph on his desk. The elderly woman Margaret had noticed earlier. I lost her 6 months ago. Since then, everything feels hollow. Even this. He gestured at the beautiful office. Especially this. Asterisk Margaret understood that particular kind of grief. The way it could make even the most beautiful spaces feel empty. She'd lost her own mother 3 years ago and still sometimes reached for the phone to call her before remembering. Asterisk grief has its own timeline. She said quietly, my mother used to tell me that missing someone is just love with nowhere to go. But maybe it can go into caring for others, into the small kindnesses we show strangers. Asterisk Thomas turned from the window, his eyes bright with ench tears. You know, I came back tonight because I couldn't sleep. I've been having trouble sleeping for months. But walking into this office and seeing the care you'd taken, the gentle way you'd arranged everything, it felt like home for the first time since she died. Asterisk they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. To people who had found an unexpected connection in the fluorescent-lit quiet of an office building after hours. Asterisk would you? Thomas hesitated. Then continued, would you consider different position? My personal assistant left last month, and I've been struggling to find someone who understands that work should be about more than just profit margins. Someone who brings the same care to people that you bring to cleaning this office. Asterisk Margaret stared at him in shock. But you don't know anything about me, my education, my background. Asterisk I know you treat a stranger's workspace with reverence. I know you notice details, the flowers, the way you positioned my mother's photograph to catch the light better. I know you see this as more than just a job. Thomas smiled, and for the first time since entering the office, he looked truly peaceful. In my experience, that matters more than any degree. Asterisk Margaret felt tears spill over, but they were tears of gratitude rather than embarrassment. Yes, I'd like that very much. Asterisk as they talked through the details, the hours, the responsibilities, the salary that would change her life. Margaret couldn't help but think about the strange grace of wrong turns. She'd entered the wrong office but found exactly what she hadn't known she was looking for: recognition, respect, and the reminder that kindness creates its own kind of magic. Asterisk later. As they prepared to leave together, Thomas paused by the chess set. Do you play? Asterisk my father taught me. Margaret said, though it's been years. Asterisk perhaps we could have a game sometime. I have a feeling you're full of surprises. Asterisk walking to the elevator. Margaret realized that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with what looks like a mistake. She'd cleaned the wrong office but found the right moment. The right person. The right reminder that we're all just looking for someone to see us, really see us, and find us worthy of kindness. Asterisk, the elevator doors closed, and Margaret caught her reflection in the polished steel. For the first time in months, she saw not just a tired cleaning woman, but someone with value. Someone with a future that stretched ahead bright with possibility. Asterisk outside. The city lights twinkled like promises, and Margaret smiled, thinking her mother would have loved this story. Love with nowhere to go, finding its way to exactly where it needed to be.